Together was a simple horror movie, not the greatest thing ever, but it was well made with a good flair for visual storytelling as well as a thematic significance. It was a lot of fun, kept a great tonal balance between scary and comedic, and had some very effective body horror. However, I'm not here today to review the film, rather I want to talk about some of the film's themes. I won't be discussing the central themes of the film in this video, even though they are very interesting in their own right. No, in this video I'd like to focus on a sub-theme of the film, and that being the depiction of a certain modern male archetype through the characterization of Dave Franco's Tim. This film does a very good job at relaying a specific type of contemporary male persona onto screen in a way that's very natural and relatable. It was an aspect of the film that stood out to me the most, so I felt compelled to talk about it. I think it captures a universal experience that a lot of men in their mid-20s can relate to. Granted, the character Tim is 35 in this, but that sort of plays into these themes even more. The fact that he is so old yet still quite immature. He's not really an adolescent, but he still embodies the characteristics of one. Sorry if you're 35 and watching this, I'm not saying you're old, I'm just trying to illustrate a point. Compared to me, you're old. So the central point of Together is that it's a body horror movie that doubles as a cautionary tale about codependent relationships. The horror elements serve as quite obvious metaphors for the negative aspects of the main couple's relationship. Dave Franco plays Tim, who is involved in a long-term partnership with Millie, played by Alison Brie. Although the film is about this couple, Dave Franco is really the main character, as for the most part it's all told primarily through his perspective. It's his character study, it's his psyche that gets deconstructed, all his fears and flaws. We're in his shoes as we watch him struggle with this relationship where he has one foot in and one foot out. The core narrative is about him being too fearful and immature to fully commit to this relationship, whilst at the same time being dependent on it, almost being mothered by his partner. He is a heavily flawed man-child who doesn't think things through, has little practical skills, is emotionally immature, and can't make adult decisions. Apart from that, he's a pretty sick Sigma. So what struck me about his character was how concisely it encapsulated a very real male archetype from modern day society. You could even say it captured it better than certain pieces of media that have gotten tons of praise for their depictions of similar people. There are so many things about this guy which are embarrassingly relatable to a lot of men in the mid-20s. Just this state of not having your shit together, not knowing how to do basic adult stuff, not knowing what you want in life, letting your fears dictate your actions and decision making. This character embodies all these things so well, and never does it feel like a caricature either. It comes over rather naturally, and it's fairly empathetic despite it also showing him to be quite flawed. The film has tons of scenes that demonstrate all of these aspects and traits of his, namely his ineptitude as a man. We're constantly fed instances where he's just got no idea what he's doing.
I remember that morning our legs stuck together?
You said that was just mildew.
Well, since when do I know anything about mildew? I don't even know what it fucking is.
He has none of the practical skills possessed by previous generations, he doesn't know how to work power tools. Early in the film, the couple go for a walk in the woods, and when Tim tries to take charge, he quickly gets them lost. He didn't account for the bad weather either, so they get pissed on. It's sort of a funny depiction of a Gen Z couple trying to do basic adult things, but failing because there's no organisation or planning. But again, it isn't reducing them into caricatures to get the point across.
Okay, that way's north.
Okay, that way's north. Like, this guy knows nothing about navigation other than words he's heard on TV and the internet.
Okay, that way's north.
But this all does lead to them falling into the cave with the strange water, which is the supernatural catalyst of the film. It's funny because a lot of horror movies have to depend on the stupidity of the main characters for the plot to proceed. But with this film, it's leaning into this human incompetence in a way that's both natural and thematic. A lot of horror films struggle with the whole, okay, how do we get these characters into this situation because we don't want to make them seem too dumb. But in this film's context, it all makes sense. Once in the cave, Tim does bust out a lighter, which makes one go, oh, that's resourceful, at least he brought one useful piece of equipment, but then it's revealed that he only has that on him because he started smoking again.
When?
Just before the move. You?
The same.
There is a lot of very intentional decisions like this in the screenplay. Like in a lot of horror films, the characters would just inexplicably have a torch on them, but here there's actually a specific explanation as to why he has this, and it's something that ties into his character as well. This happens a lot later in the film, but there is an instance of Tim having a piece of knowledge that comes in handy, is when they need to take the muscle relaxers and he knows that they'll kick in quicker if they snort them.
They'll kick in quicker if we snort them.
I don't know how planned out this was, but I love how this is something he's knowledgeable about, taking drugs, because of course. An additional thing we learn about Tim in this film is that he's got this air of selfishness to him, another mark of immaturity. That sense of responsibility for others that comes with being an adult hasn't quite reached him yet.
My phone. Shit. Fuck. My demos were on there.
I'm fine, by the way.
My demos were on there. Surprise, surprise, he can't make a fire either, but he did see Man vs. Wild, so that's something.
Remember when we used to watch Man vs. Wild?
Yeah, you fucking don't.
You know, I'm not even judging, I'm the exact same. I don't know how to do half this shit. I just think it's hilarious how well this film is illustrating how scuffed our generation is, where we all need YouTube video tutorials to function. And also, I've got to say, I'm not even a fan of Dave Franco, but fuck is he perfectly cast in this as this bumbling, moody, boyish idiot. He embodies all these traits so well. It's the sort of role he was born for, honestly.
Okay, she's like, I don't want to go to jail. You know what happens to a handsome guy like me in jail? It rhymes with grape. It rhymes with grape.
So Tim drinks the MacGuffin water, again the stupidity and ignorance of the lead being a part of the themes of the film. The supernatural elements are allowed to occur because of these intentional character flaws.
I wouldn't.
Man vs. Wild, babe.
Now, just to touch upon some of the core themes of the film for context's sake, the whole shtick of Together is that this couple drink this mysterious water that causes them to physically merge into each other, creating one human from the two of them. It's a simple but effective metaphor for relationships that are way too codependent. It's also about many other things, like being drawn to someone despite the fact they're bad for you. The body horror elements are a personification of how difficult and awkward it can be to split up with your long-term partner. The more time passes in the film, the harder it becomes, both mentally and physically, to separate. It's emblematic of real life. The longer you stay with someone, the harder it'll be when you split. It's a darkly comedic, cautionary tale that showcases what happens when you don't pluck up the courage to end an unhealthy partnership. Again, it is primarily told through the boyfriend's perspective. We see that he is the one with the most damning flaws. I'd say for the most part, Millie is a very good person. They almost make her too good, too reasonable. This may have been a problem if the film wasn't more so a character study of an immature man staying in a relationship that he resents. It's not so much a story about two toxic people, it's about this guy who lets his flaws get the better of him. Really, Millie is the voice of reason in this. Her biggest flaw is that she's too complacent about the situation. She is manipulated into being complacent by the Jamie character who slips her the water in the same scene. From that point onwards, she begins to literally gravitate towards Tim. What's literally happened is she's drank the water and has started showing the same symptoms as Tim, but metaphorically, she's allowed herself to settle into this bad relationship. Again, out of complacency and after being gaslit a little by Jamie. Jamie's whole complacency can sometimes be harmony. Very bad advice. To get those two things mixed up would be catastrophic.
Well, you know, complacency can sometimes simply be harmony.
But this is a very real thing that a lot of people struggle with. We sometimes have difficulty discerning whether something is unhealthy or just part of the process. It can be quite a stressful experience when you genuinely don't know if you're justified in your emotions or if you're overreacting. The poor girl gets gaslit hard by Jamie in this scene though. It's brutal. But how many couples have made this grave error, taken the complacent route because at a glance it looks like harmony?
For better or worse, I was me because of him.
Despite that, for the film to work, Dave Franco has to have all of these hang-ups which stunt his development as a person. These hang-ups and fears cause him to have deep-seated committal and intimacy issues, as well as almost no sense of responsibility for other people. In his very first scene, we see him going through pictures of him and his girlfriend, and he's got a big smile on his face, but the smile turns to a frown when he sees a picture of him and his in-laws. In-laws represent a further stage of commitment, and that intimidates him. The deeper in you get, the more you become a part of a new family. Just having a girlfriend is nice, but meeting the parents is something else entirely. Also, just the sight of old people scares him because that also represents long-term devotion to another. And of course, the photo reminds him of his own parents, whom you later find out met with a nasty end. Due to this traumatic experience where he witnessed a very negative embodiment of companionship, Tim has a twisted, negative view of long-term commitment. In following scenes, we learn that Tim isn't having that much sex with Millie. He's afraid of intimacy because it involves the physical union of two people, and he's petrified of the thought of being tethered to someone else. This fear of sex is of course personified by the body horror as well, especially in the scene where he gets his dick stuck in a vagina. Side note, I'm so glad that the film went there. It's explicit, but justifiably so. It's illustrating a fear, it's thematically relevant, and it's just effective horror. God forbid a gory film make us squirm. The whole motif of them kissing and their mouths joining also communicates this fear of intimacy. Of course, at that stage, he's accepted it. Additionally, I like to think that in the scenes where he's infected with the water and is magnetically drawn to Alison Brie, that's all a representation of the experience of being sexually drawn to someone even though you don't want to be with them anymore, but you keep thinking with your dick and you can't control yourself. It's a very scary place to be in. Say if you knew someone was bad for you, but another part of you lusted after them, making you stay. It feels like a loss of free will almost, and that's exactly what's depicted in the film. These themes of being tethered to another person are once again brought up in this scene with Tim and his friends.
It's cool, it's just when I die, I don't want someone else's life flashing before my eyes.
That sums up a lot of what's going on in Tim's head. There's this fear that your partner's life is superseding your own to the point where you're just an extension of someone else. There is of course that male urge to be your own man, which is a factor here, but the film isn't really about that. Tim has his music career, but that's there to demonstrate how ill-disciplined he is as a man, where he never completely commits to anything. Like a teenager, he's indecisive about everything. He hasn't learned how to make serious decisions. He exists in this in-between state where he doesn't 100% commit to anything, and so everything around him turns to ruin. Marriage, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that. The girlfriend is the one who proposes to him, for fuck's sake. Dude has zero initiative.
Are you joking?
I was actually about to say, oh, but he's got his own flaws and traumas, I'm not judging, but then I remembered that he's 35 years old. 35! That's me in under 9 years. God, that's a horrible thought. Does this film stray into girl headcanon like, OMG, my boyfriend, he's such a man-child, he wants to be in a band and he can't drive? I think yeah, it kinda does, but that's okay, because it's drawing on something real. It's not crass about it either, like neither of the characters are stereotypical or cartoonish. It isn't mean-spirited, it's introspective, and actually quite empathetic.
Sorry, it's just been a really stressful day.
Alison Brie is really good in this. She has those huge eyes which allow her to be extremely expressive, so it's a bit of a cheat code, but she's awesome. I love how the cast of Community just sneak about Hollywood, occasionally give a great performance in a bit role and then vanish again. Millie's character is shown to be miles ahead of Tim when it comes to being a grown-up. She's got her shit together, she's self-aware too, sometimes addressing the core problems head on.
But still, if we don't split now, it'll only be harder later.
She doesn't want a boyfriend anymore, she wants a husband, a full-fledged man.
She needs to ditch that zero and get herself a hero.
Me and my, God, boyfriend sounds so immature, partner?
Come to think of it, the term boyfriend is very immature sounding. It literally has the word boy in it, and that's what Tim is, a boy. Boy, 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 boy. The boyfriend-girlfriend phase is an early adolescent form of the relationship, and Millie is ready for the next step, but he simply isn't there. She's the only adult of the two, and so she has to mother him a little. She even says as much.
I can't make every decision for you, I'm not your fucking mother. Even if I'm starting to feel like her.
What's that supposed to mean?
Like I'm living with something that's dead.
She does lose her shit a few times, but it's always extremely justified and understandable because this dude is a loser. I also like how she says it's like I'm living with something that's dead, and then we get the physical manifestation of this idea with the missing couple monster in the cave. This thing that's weighed down by this dead appendage. There's a lot of metaphorical monsters in this. Now I want to talk about the scene that prompted me to make this whole video, that being the therapist scene. We learn here that Tim has a history of suffering from anxiety and panic attacks, an experience that's extremely emblematic of the contemporary male existence. However, a particularly striking thing that occurs in this scene is we find out that the therapist and Tim are the same age. It's almost this little gag.
No, I don't think so. How old are you? We're actually the same age. See, there's a history of mental illness.
Now this is significant for two reasons. Firstly, we immediately compare Tim to the therapist. Both are adults of the same age, but the therapist is clearly way more put together and mature. Just his appearance and position demonstrate to us how much he resembles an adult. You ever come across someone the same age as you, who is so far ahead of you in life and been like, shit, I gotta get my shit together, I can barely cook a fucking meal. I do need to stop self-reporting in this very serious artistic video essay where I sound really profound, but what can I say, man? Life's a fucking mess. Some of this shit is so goddamn relatable, it's cathartic.
We're actually the same age. See, there's a history of
Mental illness.
Secondly, however, this moment evokes another common experience of post-adolescence. As you get older, you start to see people the exact same age as you occupying these vital positions in society. All these third-party services you totally rely on are being run by dudes just like you, and this can be quite perturbing. You think to yourself, I don't trust my deranged generation to keep the world intact, like fuck that. You go to the doctors and you're getting a checkup from the guy who used to show you ISIS beheading videos in high school. Your therapist is a Swiftie. I put my trust in these pillars of society even though they're managed by people who are potentially just as inept as me. Jokes aside though, I am really glad that this film commented on this phenomenon. How intentional this was is up for debate, but it resonated with me.
How old are you?
Now I have dunked on Tim a lot in this video, but to his credit he can cook. That's one useful skill that we learn he has. In fact, we find out that because he is such a good cook, Millie never really learned how to cook herself because she could always rely on Tim. The same way he never learnt to drive because she would always take him everywhere. There's the scene where we learn all this, and it's clear that both partners have a slight resentment towards each other over this codependency. This is actually one of the few examples of Alison Brie being codependent and a little bit lazy.
I can't cook to save my life, and it's his fault.
No, it's my fault.
You're so good at this stuff, I've never had to learn.
What do you mean she can't cook? It's in her DNA. Of course you got Jamie there, who quite manipulatively says that this is just the two of them completing each other, passing it off as a positive thing, and again here's the idea of mistaking a bad situation for a normal part of life, deluding yourself into accepting flaws because that's just the way it's supposed to be. How many couples have done this? Like, oh, we make up for each other's failings, and then they split up and realise that each of them are just half of a person. Remember, a coupling is supposed to be the coming together of two, not two halves. God, I'm such a wise man, honestly, it's insane.
The truth is, I remember exactly who I was. Okay, I was miserable. I was incomplete, cold.
The climax of the film gives us this ironic, bittersweet conclusion. Well, really there's nothing sweet about it. The couple fully buy into the delusion, Millie becomes complacent, and Tim fully commits out of cowardice. The concept of splitting up has quite literally become too much of a daunting and painful idea, so they just say fuck it and pretend that they've made a healthy decision. They both give in to the sexual yearning for each other that keeps so many toxic relationships intact, and they start going at it and then they merge. It's creepy, gross, and conceptually kinda disturbing, willingly trapping yourself in an unhealthy relationship. My interpretation of this ending is very negative, but at least we know it's better than the alternative of one of them being dead. At least they are both finally committing 100% to something, that being this delusion. If they'd gone the other route, then the merging would have been botched and they'd have ended up like the monster in the cave. That's what happens when one person's fully committed and the other person isn't. Ah, damn it. Yeah, that final shot was a little goofy. You know, the obvious ADR and everything. You know what, forget everything I said about this film, it sucks. It's not good. I'm taking back the profundity I gave it when I discussed it in video essay format. So yes, that is my take on Together. I think Dave Franco's character is a concise encapsulation of a certain type of modern male, an archetype that a lot of us dudes can relate to, someone who can't face up to responsibility an indecisive, emotionally stunted man-child who is afraid of adult commitments. The film also relays the fear of intimacy using the horror genre, which is awesome. I don't think this is one of those films that's just dunking on men either. I find this depiction to be rather sympathetic or empathetic. It's representing an experience that's very real, relatable. It's cathartic to watch. The experience of not really knowing what mildew is because it's just one of those words you've heard over the years and never really investigated as to what the fuck it actually is. Like, isn't it a fucking smell? Honestly, I don't know. Again, I don't think this film is fantastic. It's actually very simple, but I decided to make a video on it, and turns out I had all of these cool things to say about it, so maybe it is a masterpiece after all. I will say it mixes comedy in with horror wonderfully without the two tones ever clashing or taking away from each other. It's never crass or self-referential either where, oh, that just happened. The comedy comes from the absurdity of the horror. You have scenes that are both horrific and humorous. And also finally, I'd like to say that its sense of visual storytelling is also really good, particularly at the beginning. It gets a lot across without exposition, and when there is dialogue explaining things, it's fairly naturalistic. All in all, it is a very gripping and entertaining horror movie that is somewhat intellectually stimulating as well. So, I mean, most people have probably seen it already, but yeah, it was a recommendation from me, baby. Go see it.
And remember to fucking subscribe.
Thanks to the patrons. Thank you, Matt Delaney. Thank you, Mason Lydon. Thank you, DF.